Well, I guess you're gonna get the basic question that everybody always gets,
No
like,
sweat.
how did the group get together? How'd you guys get together?
Mark, the guitar player, and myself came together really very shortly after I had become a Christian, and I had played for a number of years in club bands and whatnot, and became a Christian. Had a problem with doing that, and that sound you hear is the ripping of a bell. Okay, and so anyway, I was looking for a situation with Christians, preferably original music. A songwriter, and I could contribute some lyrics, that type of arrangement. And the Lord kind of brought us together really accidentally through a mutual friend. That's been about 8 years ago now. Sat around in his living room, played some stuff on keyboards, really kind of started an informal relationship back then, and not only became involved as terrific friends all this time, but musical comrades as well. And we have developed our relationship, both songwriting and performing together, for that 8 years, and probably, I guess, 4, maybe 5 different original Christian bands. About 4 years ago, we were looking for a new keyboardist, and Pete came into the picture also through a mutual friend. He joined the band, and not only did we click together spiritually, musically, but Pete also provided a songwriting component, a different kind of musical component that really kind of shored up the direction that we were looking for. So the three of us basically did our first demo tape. This has been now 3.5 years ago. It was a 2-song demo. Come Alive, as a matter of fact, was one of the songs. And took it to Frontline Records. Jim Kentner signed us to our record contract. And then that's basically been the core of the band now for the 3.5 years. In fact, we've worked now with 4, maybe 5 different drummers. Only recently has Clark, I think, become at least our full-time live drummer.
In your eyes, who is Idle Cure as far as the mission of the band, and who are you?
Well, I think Idle Cure is tempting, because I think you find out who you are not only by saying, okay, we're this and this is what we're going to be and this is who we're going to be. I don't really think that gives you a full perspective because you look at things narrowly that way. A great deal of us determining what God's mission for us was and where we felt we reached people was by coming out and playing live. I would say that our burden, our ministry, is strictly to reach kids, high school, college age, maybe a little bit older type of age. College really is a good age group for us. We really feel a burden musically to fit into that niche. I would say there was kind of a conception that most mainstream Christian bands were not quite edgy enough. And then you had that huge jump to white metal, to Christian metal. And there was very little in between. And we really felt that there was a niche to feel, and we felt that was the kind of music that we could enjoy all along. So it was a natural progression for us to kind of go into that pattern. Our burden is definitely to be an evangelical band, to reach kids, not only in the United States, but we've discovered a great ministry for the band in Europe as well. So, when we first started out, we thought we would just kind of be a studio band. We'd sit and do records and do this type of thing. Wouldn't do too much gigging, and for the first year didn't do much at all. And then I think by getting out, by being in touch with people like we did tonight, I think we've really discovered what our mission is.
As far as I noticed on your last album, Youth with a Mission, how are you involved with that? You sing about it and it's in the credits. How are you involved with that?
Youth with a Mission was responsible for our first trip over to Europe. They completely financed the whole thing, set up the gigs, housed us, fed us, were amazing. And we saw not only through, because we had kind of looked at Christianity through young, and I'm going to say Americanized ideals, And with Youth with a Mission, I don't think any of us had really had too much touch with the mission field, so to speak. So Youth with a Mission opened our eyes, if you will, to what's going on in places where they don't take growing up with a Bible for granted. They don't take a relationship with Jesus Christ for granted. These things are new to them. And so, it's, to see the Christianity that was growing and how Youth for the Mission was contributing to that and developing that really was amazing to us. Not to mention, they just treated us unbelievably. And we felt so attached to them, and specifically to the head of Youth with a Mission in Augsburg, Germany, Eddie Huff. He's kind of become our spiritual and European liaison, and it's just we felt so moved and so rejuvenated by what we saw there that we felt we should come back and devote a song to that.
Mm-hmm. How is, if I'm not mistaken, how is Dr. Dobson in with this? I think I see his name in the inside of the cover of your album. Or something.
We're all extremely familiar with Dr. Dobson. I'm a great lover of his works and his ministry, and I have been for some time. We always would talk amongst ourselves of the concept of tough love. How we just felt, God, this is a relevant concept right now, particularly when we're reaching out and talking to kids. We found that we were using it a lot. I found I was saying it a lot. It was just kind of a concept that I became very close to. Then we played the Ichthus Festival in Kentucky. Their whole theme, if you will, was tough love. And so we just thought, this is really relevant, and there are still too many people who don't really understand the concept. Maybe if we named an album that, it would do something to kind of throw the term more into usage. And not only that, we just thought it really fit the type of music we were generating.
Great. You said you were in bands previously. Was that with Mark, or was he in the band all the time with you?
All the Christian bands.
All the Christian bands, right. Okay. How do your album sales compare between the two, the first one and the second one? How well is the second one done compared to the first one?
Well, interestingly enough, the first album shipped almost nothing, because we were unknown.
Right.
Nobody knew. Breakaway, I think, became the number one rock song of the country. Take It became the number one ballad. There was this huge dichotomy set up, and we were laboring under this. People saying, "What are you? Are you a ballad band, or are you a rock and roll band?" And all we were wanting to do was explore the whole spectrum of what we felt comfortable doing. I love singing ballads. We like writing them, but Idle Cure is probably, I'm going to say, transitioning into more of a rock and roll band. So the first album shipped almost nothing, but then gained a great deal of momentum. Second album shipped a ton, but the huge irony of it is that now the first album is outselling the second album again. So in terms of comparison, to be honest with you, they're neck and neck. Two albums have sold almost identical amounts, within 10% of one another.
Wow. Has there ever been a turning point in the band as far as a certain time?
I would say our trip to Europe, our first trip to Europe.
And when was that?
That was the winter, a year after the release of the first album, so it would have been 2 years ago this coming winter. Just prior to the release of Tough Love.
Who would you say that you are your inspirations, or do you style your band after? Is there any such group, a secular group, or anything that you've tried to maybe copy after, or anything like that? That's kind of a bad term.
I would say stylistically, I have to be honest with you, most of my musical influence, I didn't become a Christian until I was 24 years old. So most of my influences were secular. Those influences were Lou Gramm of Foreigner, Mike Reno of Loverboy, Joe Elliott of Def Leppard. Personally, stylistically, from a singing standpoint, I think Mark, pretty much along the same lines, he was really a lot more progressive. He was into almost Pat Metheny type of things. And then Pete was into kind of a Genesis sort of progressive thing. This was on a secular realm. From a Christian standpoint, you look at things differently. I guess the band that I look up to extraordinarily, not only because of their ministry, but because of where they're going music-wise, is White Heart. I love Margaret Becker's approach and style of music. We've come to know and greatly admire Petra. So, the list is growing. It really is.
That's super. How long was Chuck King with you, and then he left for Shout? Why was why was the choice to leave Idle Cure, a band that was just beginning to go to, the band had kind of had some foundation when he left, to go to a band that hadn't had any foundation?
Well, Shout hadn't had any foundation, but Ken Tamplin, the former of Shout, had, and a lot of connections. And Shout's design was to penetrate the secular market. Mm-hmm. That's really what they attempted to do. Now, at that point in time, Idle Cure, was kind of a part-time band, if you will. We weren't gigging a lot. I think Chuck wanted to be more active. I think Chuck wanted to devote his life to music, make it a full-time endeavor, that type of thing. And so I think with Ken, that promise became, something that he felt he should pursue. And, we're still great friends. My wife is spending the weekend with Chuck's wife, as a matter of fact, this weekend. We go golfing all the time together. It was something that we prayed about collectively. And it was something that we looked upon at the time. We get asked a lot of times, gee, what was this huge split, da-da-da-da-da? And, not to not have anything newsworthy, but it was really kind of incredible how it happened. One of the reasons Idle Cure couldn't do many gigs is because we were a little top-heavy. We had too many pieces to be able to take the show on the road. So when Chuck left, instead of getting a new guitarist to replace him, Mark and I prayed about it, and Mark said, Steve, I think I should try and carry the burden on guitars. That would allow us to do more gigs, and we'll go about it that way. And all of a sudden, the doors opened for us. We were able to reach out more. Chuck also went more, I think, into a musical realm that he was comfortable with. He and Kenny really liked the more metal kind of feel and everything. So I think at the time we looked upon it as, the Lord taking one branch and splitting it into two. And all of a sudden, if it was God's will, that now two branches were bearing fruit. And I really think that's how we looked at it at the time.
You said something about Shout penetrating the secular market. I feel that you guys have a quote-unquote secular sound. I would say you're one of the bands that come the closest to, if there's such a thing, the radio sound, the secular radio sound. Do you feel there's a time where you will try to break into the secular market?
Well, see, I think that's something that's got to be left entirely up to God's will. Because I think the moment that you try and target your sound for that, then you stand at a crossroads and you've got to make the decision. You've got to, a band has either got to say, we want to serve God, we want to be a ministry band, and that's going to be our purpose. Or a band has got to say, we want to go secular, we want to get commercial, we want to sell 1 million records. And it would be nice if the two could happen simultaneously, but that's got to be God's will. You can't say we're going to go to secular and we're going to hope that God blesses. You've got to say we want to serve God, and if it's God's will, we can reach out into the secular. If the Lord feels that our armor is strong enough, and if we're ready, some point in time, the Lord is going to launch a band in the secular. I think that happened with Stryper, but it's going to be rare. It's a wicked, wicked world in secular music. And let's face it, the armor's got to be tempered. So, sound-wise, we strive to be commercial. I'm not going to, and that's what we're comfortable playing, But it's not often that easy. In a lot of ways, our record company would like us to be more commercial and do ballads because Take It did so well. Mm-hmm. And so I think we're trying to go with what we feel it's in our hearts to do musically.
Your new album, what's it going to be like?
Well, interesting. It's a little tough to say because we submitted 16 songs, from which we'll pick 10. And depending on which songs you were to pick, it could really go a variety of ways. I think we feel comfortable in going with very, very edgy rock and still going to ballads. And the question becomes, we get a lot of reaction. Well, which of the two albums did you like the best? There's no question on Tough Love. We tried to go for an edgier sound. That was intentional, As to whether that's the band's direction or as to whether we want to try something different, I would say there are the edgy rock songs in there, Mark is just inclined to write guitar songs of that nature. Mm-hmm. There are also Bart of Mercy type songs in there. And then we're also trying to get back, I think, more to a refined Take It type ballad. And maybe a little bit more polish on the album. So everybody's still deciding. There are a lot of people's decisions go into which songs are going to come out. So at this point in time, it's difficult to say what the overall feel is going to be.
When can we expect it?
We start work December 1. About 2 months, 6 weeks in the studio, 2 weeks mixed down, and then about another month to master and all. I'm going to say March, early April.
Well, one more question. As a band, what are your future plans? What are your future expectations for where you guys are going to go?
Well, I'll tell you, that's a great question. After the first album, we sat around and we said, okay, where are we going? What are we doing? What do we expect? What are we da-da-da-da? How many gigs are we going to do? How much are we going to charge? Da-da-da-da? And you set up all these plans, okay? And the problem with that was that you get so planned and so set in one direction and, okay, this is the plan and we're going to follow it. But all of a sudden, you start not leaving room for God's will. What if God says, I don't want you to tour the United States, I want you in Europe. I don't want you in Europe, I want you doing it. You have to always have that open mind. So I think one of the reasons we kind of keep playing it off the cuff a lot is because God has changed the direction of the band. If we've been set in a way and had everything planned and I don't know, bought a ton of equipment, bought a bus, gone on the road and everything, and Chuck left the band, it might have broken the band up. Instead, we remained in a very flexible mode. Chuck left the band. We said, Lord, what does this mean? What do you have in mind for us? And he showed us. And the band grew as a result of that. So I think that's taught us to, have plans, do the next album, try to set the direction of the band. Would we want to play for? How many gigs do you want to try and do that type of thing? But anything other than that, where we want to be in 2 years, that type of thing, has got to be left up to God's will.
Right. Great. Hey, I appreciate your time.